as a strategic stronghold, in this case as a small fortified mansion with a mill set into the granite bed of the River Cher. This was the estate of the once powerful Mark family. It was built in 1513, when Michelangelo had just finished the Sistine Chapel's ceiling. England, Rome, and Spain were about to invade France, and the Mark estate was snatched up by Thomas Boyer, an ambitious financier who'd had his eye on the mansion for years. His wife Catherine oversaw Chenonceau's beginnings. Over the flowing water, on the robust piers and foundation of the stone mill, she built a structure that was part of the land, part of the river. From its square base, Catherine drew an elegantly complex form of projecting towers and rhythmic windows. The varied roofline's angles are echoed in her additions to the old tower keep. The diverse shapes, the great windows, and the detail of the structure make this dense stone seem light and airy. Inside, Madame Boyer extended this sense of airiness and space with a design innovation that was unique to France, a hallway. From this ample passage, separate doors lead to private living quarters. Previously, these rooms would have all adjoined. By 1517, most of the house was complete, and King Francis I praised it as the beautiful palace and house situated on the River Cher, where we might sometimes stay. Cardinal Boyer, a relative, sanctified this intimate chapel. Madame Boyer had skillfully begun what would become one of France's true architectural gems. Again and again throughout the castle, her husband engraved his motto, but its meaning, as shown on the Renaissance chimney in the sitting room, could as easily apply to Catherine Boyer. It says, "If the building is finished, it will preserve my memory." The memory finally bequeathed by Chenonceau's First Lady was one of hospitality and welcoming. Chenonceau was a castle in name only. It is actually a chateau, which has the flavor of a castle, as a liqueur has the flavor of a fruit. By the 16th century, mobile artillery had made all but the most massive fortifications obsolete. Chenonceau's turrets and stone walls are disciplined, yet romantic retellings of medieval defenses. Discipline, mixed with awesome beauty and ambition, described the next woman to favor Chenonceau with the spark of her personality. Diane de Poitiers. Gorgeous and witty, known to favor dressing in black and white, Diane would create here the finest garden in all of France. And through sheer guile and force of her will, she would also fulfill Boyer's ambition, making Chenonceau a resplendent center of French court life. Diane had been King Henry II's governess. Though 15 years his senior, she later became his mistress and lifelong infatuation. In 1547, Henry presented the beautiful Diane with Chenonceau after Madame Boyer's son lost it in bankruptcy. Diane immediately set about embellishing the castle interiors, commissioning this magnificent carved fireplace for her bedroom. Diane's favor with the king would ultimately make her suffer at the hands of this woman, the king's wife, Queen Catherine. But Diane Poitiers was a more than equal adversary. She styled herself Diane the Huntress and usually got what she went after. Realizing she would lose Chenonceau if anything happened to Henry, she took decisive steps to make the estate legally hers. Through daring court work, she annulled the decree that transferred Chenonceau from the bankrupt Boyer family to the crown. Diane knew the penniless Boyer heirs couldn't afford the debt that came with the castle. She bought Chenonceau for a song. Next, the new owner launched a Napoleonic campaign to make Chenonceau's farms show a profit. Diane had grand plans for renovating the castle's interior and grounds, but the money had to come from somewhere. With a born manager's efficiency, she created a plan of business investment and expansion. Volumes of records account for every franc she spent. Each meticulous entry is written in her own hand. First, she increased Chenonceau's land holdings and rents and started a new building program. To save money, she cut back on the wages of her staff, reducing her state manager's salary by 30% and taking away his heating and food allowance. Vineyards were planted and new farm buildings sprang up. From her startled employees, Diane demanded regular progress reports. The farm started making real money. The Loire Valley drank good country wine from Diane's wine presses and ate juicy peach apricots from her orchards. And the castle's entrepreneurial mistress didn't stop there. To create the finest garden in France, Diane commissioned 14,000 days of work from local laborers. 9,000 wild violet and strawberry plants were gathered from local woods. 150 mulberry trees were shipped in to feed silkworms Diane bought for manufacturing raw silk. To protect it all, terraces were built high enough to stop a flood, using 7,000 wheelbarrows of stone. Diane's work had taken on the scale of a monument, as majestic an achievement as the castle itself. As a crowning touch, Diane built an elegant bridge across the River Cher, never imagining that this bridge would one day save the castle itself. In just a few years, young Diane had tripled Chenonceau's profits and the value of the estate. Still, it was her rare beauty rather than brains that won her favor and power in France's loftiest circles. This beauty, it was said, came from a daily bath in the Cher, the river that ran beneath her beloved Chenonceau. But in the end, Diane lost both her loves. In a hapless joust at a festival tournament, her patron and lover, King Henry II, caught the point of a lance and died. Then, despite Diane's legal ownership, her hated rival, the Queen, finally claimed the castle for herself. This painting shows Diane portrayed as the Greek goddess of the hunt, now banished from Chenonceau. The next strong woman to occupy the river chateau was none other than the long-suffering Queen Catherine, King Henry II's widowed wife. Any normal woman would have been crushed by years of lopsided comparison with the heavenly Diane. But Catherine was a Medici of the Italian merchant clan. After Henry's death, she set out to best Diane the Huntress in everything. And in her first act, she would drive herself nearly insane. To honor her late husband, she had his monogram, an H, displayed prominently around the castle. She also added double C's, her own initials. When she combined them, which was the convention of the time, the results were horrifying. D's, two of them, everywhere, the sign of her nemesis, Diane. Diane had been a manager, but Catherine was a queen, one with lots of catching up to do. She began her regal building program by enlarging the chateau. First, she built a two-story gallery on top of the bridge created by Diane. This would be the grand reception hall her rival had gone without, and Catherine planned many receptions, for now she could afford them. The estate was turning even greater profits. The vineyards had become famous. Silk was spun right on the estate, creating the sought-after Queen's cloth. In Catherine's time, gay festivities lit up Chenonceau, while bloody conflict darkened Paris. Religious reform smoldered throughout the continent. France was surrounded by enemies. Chenonceau became the Queen's stage for statecraft. Like a business lunch in New York, a ball in Turin was a forum for serious negotiation and alliance building. Catherine's plans for Chenonceau grew more grandiose, just as her funds started to dwindle. The castle bears the scars of her ambition. To this day, the south end of the gallery is marred by unfinished masonry work. Fortunately, Catherine's greatest plan for Chenonceau never left the drawing board. It was for the best. The castle's charm would have been swallowed in this gaudy expansion. Modest improvements were still possible. To cater the outlandishly lavish celebrations she loved to stage, Catherine enlarged the kitchens. The Queen planted her own, more formal garden in her native Italian style, fragrant with lemon and orange trees, cooled by fountains and graced by sculpture. These gardens were the site of Catherine's most extravagant celebration. Many of the court women came dressed as men, and the serving women dressed hardly at all. Catherine loved a party. This infamous event became known as the Festival of the Three Queens. Even for Renaissance France, it was an extravagant affair. Staged as an enormous play, its balls, feasts, and masquerades went on for 5 full days. The nights shimmered with thousands of candles, glittered with jewels and brocade, sang with violins. The king appeared as a queen in sparkling drag, accompanied by his favorite boys, known as the cuties. It was difficult to tell, wrote one guest, if one saw a man queen or a woman king. In 1584, the celebrations came to an end. Catherine left Chenonceau to avoid a wave of the plague. She died in the cold beginning of 1589 at Blois, willing the chateau and its estate to her daughter-in-law, Louise of Lorraine, France's new queen. Instead of parties, the castle's next mistress would deck the castle in mourning. In the summer of that year, King Henry III was mortally wounded by an assassin. In his last letter to Louise, he asked her to wait for him at Chenonceau. She did. For 15 years, Louise threw herself into a mourning every bit as theatrical as Catherine's galas, dressed always in the royal mourning costume of white. The castle on the Cher fell quiet, languishing in silence as a virtual tomb. As an interior decorator, the grieving Louise was severe. She painted the walls and ceilings of her chambers black. Themes of death stood out in white against the black. These white plumes covering the walls are an ancient French symbol signifying pain. Elsewhere, tears of grief compete with gravediggers' pickaxes and spades, as well as scratching thorns. Louise had buried herself alive. While arguably deranged, in her self-imposed exile, she carried on charitable work and became known with respect and gratitude as the White Lady of Chenonceau. She also immersed herself in religion, praying at this chapel 4 times a day and adorning the castle with Christian motifs. Her dreams of turning Chenonceau into a convent would not be realized in her lifetime. Turned out to be the manager Louise never was. For the next 12 years, she worked hard to reverse the structural decay that in her grief Louise had ignored. But now the monarchy of France was changing. Chenonceau became a backwater, a destination only for the hunting season. It saw its last royal visit when Louis XIV passed through in 1650. It was then that permission was finally granted for a Capuchin nunnery to be established in the attic rooms above the main house. The nuns, like other women, left their mark. Here at the head of the grand staircase, at the entrance to the convent. A ceremonial drawbridge separated the brides of Christ from worldly matters. The next mistress of Chenonceau was considerably more lively. The daughter of an actress in the Comédie Française, wife of a wealthy banker, she was a brilliant sun around which the intellectual stars of France revolved, Louise Dupin. The Dupins lived in the center of Paris, but in the autumn, Turenne's most beautiful season, Chenonceau once again became the playground of nobility. But these were the nobles of a new and deadly France. To escape the terror in 1782, Louise Dupin left Paris to live at Chenonceau year-round. It may have saved her life. The French Revolution reached out for her. As a wealthy bourgeois, she was denounced by the Revolutionary Committee. Chenonceau, as a symbol of royal excess, was ordered burned. But the people of Turenne blocked the way. Madame Dupin had been kind, even letting them cross Chenonceau's bridge through the ornate gallery. Her life was spared. The bridge also saved the chateau itself. You cannot burn Chenonceau, the local Monsignor argued. It is the only bridge across the Cher for miles. A few fleurs-de-lis were knocked off, some paintings, and a few pieces of royal furniture were burned in the revolutionary bonfire, but the graceful composition of stone and spirit lived on. In 1799, after the terror, and in the glorious autumn of Turenne, Madame Dupin died at 93 and was buried, according to her wishes, in the woods of Chenonceau. In the 19th century, about the time of the American Civil War, her heirs sold Chenonceau to another wealthy woman, Madame Pelouse. Like 6 women before her, she succumbed to the estate's charm and dedicated herself to a massive restoration campaign, rebuilding, repairing, and replacing. In between restoration projects, Madame Pelouse briefly revived Chenonceau's festive past. On one of those occasions, to evoke true Renaissance spirit, Italian gondoliers punted along the River Cher. But by then, the estate looked considerably better than Madame Pelouse's bank accounts. Creditors paid their respects at the castle. In 1888, the French Land Bank took possession from the last of Chenonceau's grand ladies. Today, the majestic Chenonceau is once again self-supporting. Once more, its gardens are a scene of constant activity, in a style that would make Diane de Poitiers, their original landscaper, proud. The jewel of the Cher is still in private hands, owned now by the Meunier family, France's famous chocolatiers. Tourism has turned the Grand Chateau into a playground the public, not just princes, can enjoy. They are drawn here by this timeless reflection of Chenonceau's 7 mistresses, their taste and wit, intelligence and will. Its elegance and charm are now ours to share, a lightness gliding serenely above the dark waters.